I can say to you that this is the sky and the land. There becomes royal, real, that, one of which the kingdom is here. It is a report, of the narrow door about which the gentleman speaks, clear that yes. The narrow thing is to be resigning the own, proper, mental vagabonds that we identify as us themselves from very small. She is more, one must feel called to this simplicity, differently even it turns out offensive that say to one, aftertaste of side his, her, your, thoughts. She is not that everything what one thinks serves, is that in general, it is not thought, digresses. I know that I return to what she, was saying to you in my letter, but she, costs, are worth, a sorrow, sentence. The thinking is to order, arrange, to classify, to infer with a thesis at sight, to deduce with method and is it very nice. But it is very strange that is done. Thinking is an almost science. Digressing is the dream and an expansion of the body about which St. Paul speaks in the evangelical texts that I recommended to you. As for the distress, the dissatisfaction in others, the reasons certainly do not take root in the prayer, sentence. Maybe the prayer, sentence, allows to warn these conditions, states, but in interior not decisive, resolve, contradictions. One is in the habit of having clear what she must do, nevertheless she does another thing. In any order of the life, we forget that the existence, everything what we are, we think, feel and do, everything what we have conceived and imagined. The whole existence has been given as freedom and with a deep sense that exceeds us in comprehension, beyond the revealed and accepted. Then, since we forget it, we complain, frustrate for wanting something that is not given, walk since, as, like, bothered. Our paper, roll, is similar to that one that living in a house given generously, rebuked to the benefactor for the spot in the floor, flat, parked in the corner. The nuisance, the boredom, the sense of frustration and distress, the anxiety and impression, printing, of stagnation and other emotions for the style are very useful. All these sensations warn us that we are not attentive to the presence of the gentleman. This presence it is not one, to know that God exists, but one present to feel it in the lake, in the air and in the events, which thinking up, meditating, with his, her, your, particular language they show us that. In this one to go towards the deep thing, concentrating the interest in search of certain interior unification, is in the habit of giving him, you, them, the access to a space, a time of silence, which resists any description, but that nevertheless could be translated as, that place in which everything is understood, included, in that the opposite ones meet harmonized, reconciled, and where the God's presence is done clearly perceptual. Why does it turn out so difficult to hush up? La mayoría de las veces porque no se intenta lo suficiente o con el debido método. En general suelen abordarse estas prácticas con cierta precipitación, que termina grabando un recuerdo negativo, desalentando posteriores intentos. The majority of the times because the sufficient thing is not tried, meant, or with the due method. In general, these practices are in the habit of being approached by certain rainfall, which ends up by recording a negative recollection, discouraging later, posterior, attempts. Another reason of failure is in the habit of being putting to look for the silence when there had to before be generated an attitude of interior unification. There is certainly work of one itself that can be done to be hushing up. Because the silence to which it is possible to exceed in a punctual moment of meditation is she is not equal to the fun of silence, in which the daily thing can be lived. To what specific work do you refer on one end? The silencing is a process, a way that one can be traveling in the life, which is including different areas or aspects of our activity. This progressive silencing, which not for being a gradual debit necessarily to go a lot of time, she has to see with an increasing domain, control, of that one that controls us beyond our deepest intention. It is the one to go becoming an owner of what they are called, the passions. This is the whole problem in the cultural current epoch, where precisely, to be passionate, or, the personal thing, is seen well and very valued. The fashionable thing is what is suffered, which happens overcoming the own, proper, premeditation, which to my sorrow, despite, happens to me. A A change of meaning has taken place, being produced, with the word and also a mixing, of archetypal models. It is possible to be very determined, very decisive, resolved, and determined without falling down in the passion. In his, her, your original sense, the passion is something that escapes to the own, proper, something that goes beyond the straight desire. It, he, she, is in this respect that, the personal thing, is a noise and removes of the silence. It is what it, he, she, disturbs, which it, he, she, waves, that one que saca del centro y del recuerdo de Dios y de su presencia. One appears as something very cold and boring. This type of models of conduct, that is mentioned of the impassiveness. I believe that this it is the principal opposition, examination, that I find in me towards Jesus' prayer, sentence. This of which I have heard, it, related to this image of loneliness and boredom. The impassiveness is not bored, on the contrary, it, he, she, is not to suffer. Not to be disturbed by the changeable stimuli of the inside and of out of one itself. To remain in a condition, state, of contentment and tranquility activates, not sleepy. Bring it, he, she, is to need always from something to be nice and to have to go out to look for it here and there, and on it having got lost, to fall down again in the sadness or in the depression. It, he, she, gives drowsiness not to perceive that the source, fountain, of the pleasure is having inside one same, this is God in the heart. Many saints known along the history, were persons of great valor and vigor who faced difficult circumstances, conquering the dread in his, her, your own, proper, passions, concentrating all the force of his spirituality after following, continuing, what they were perceiving as the God's will for them. It does not have anything of bored, not of coldness. Returning to the initial topic. When I have tried to sit down to do what they were indicating me as meditation, silence, it, he, she, seizes a species, kind, of worry, restlessness. That does not seem to me to be not agreeable at all. What must I do? Only to last and to persist? No, you must not last and persist as well as you say it, because it would produce for you a negative memory, report, that it, he, she, would do that. Then, in the future, you should want to hear about meditation. The first thing that you ask is because you are there, in a situation to put to ponder aspiring to the silence. That is to say, it is supposed that you feel called or attracted to this type of activity and not that it is something that you have imposed yourself or they have imposed you. If this is like that, a thing that you can do about having felt this worry, restlessness, that you say is to attend to her. You put to attend internally to the source, fountain, of this worry, restlessness. That will be located at some point of your body as a tension, an irritation, an inconvenience, trouble, of some type. And also very probably find in the origin of the worry, restlessness, same topic, something that worries you or that is not in agreement in your psychology, in your integrity. The disagreement with one itself is one of the principal sources, fountains, of worry, restlessness. It by attending to that one that worries you does not take you to the silent meditation, but it can be necessary if you are in a condition, state, of certain alteration. It can be a previous need, an imperative of the situation. It can be a previous need, an imperative of the situation. I am not speaking of falling down in a question of introspection where like psychoanalysis, it, he, she, is started thinking up, meditating, concerning, around, own, proper, problems and even to reporting with others respect of them. It is another type of activity, not very advisable for those who feel called to the silence. Rather, I am saying that not all the persons can put to ponder silently or aspiring to a condition, state, of silence. Maybe yes, in a latter, posterior, step. But there are people to the one that he, her, can be more useful to begin on the other hand. How would it, he, she, be at the time? There is in the habit of being necessary a work of personal unification. A certain displacement of the interior of one itself. This leaves the clear panorama and the person places in a calmer place more predisposed to the meditation and to the silence. This unification or interior separation of the wheat and the Daniel would come to be to put in agreement with one seam. East to put in agreement is very useful and necessary for all, but much more if one tries to ponder exceeding to the silence. Can you be a more specific respect of which thing would be to do this work of interior unification or cleanliness? Yes. I will give a thick, bulky example. A person is Christian, a medical instructor, student teacher, of his, her, your, faith, and in addition it, he, she, has the intention of being increasingly a public inspector to Christ's education. While this happens in his, her, your, interior, happens that in his, her, your, daily life he is a businessman who badly pays his, her, your, employees. Almost an exploiter, pays less than it, he, she, should according to even his, her, your, own, propel, criteria. That is to say, this person is living with an objection in his, her, your, mind, in his, her, your, heart. It is a motive of great worry, restlessness. This person is not going to be able to hush up, until he, she, agrees in his, her, your, interior to tie religious morality with his, her, your, practice of managerial life. The gospel and the ordinariness. East already to propose him, you, them, with clarity goals of change, produces an agreement still, yet, when still, yet, it has not been carried out. It is the tranquility that produces, to know what I have to do. This clarity, it is a certain unification and facilitates the meditation, which is also for us a way of prayer, sentence. Where does it, he, she, enter, approach, Jesus' prayer, sentence, in all that? Bow for, later, before, during and later. It is possible to do Jesus' prayer, sentence, at any time or internal condition, state, it, he, she, is for all, in all the situations. If I am dispersed and with worries, restlessnesses, to repeat it softly is concentrating me and unifying concerning, around, the faith in Jesus. I am putting in presence of my own, proper, faith, that already was, but forgotten, I happen to the side and to the bottom, fun, of my life. If on the other hand, I am in increasing agreement with me itself, if I am unified somehow, Jesus' prayer, sentence, leads me gradually to the silence mental and corporal, to a situation charitable of soaking of the passions, which it is the anteroom of the silence. If I am strengthened in the faith, if my daily life is an increasing conviviality with Christ and his, her, your, redeeming presence in me and in the others, Jesus' prayer, sentence, is simply the key that opens the door me for the space and time of mystical silence. And I say mystic because it is a silence on which it, he, she, cannot be said very much, it is this sense is mysterious. It, he, she, is to live, not to say. Or that you see stages of unification, soaking and meditation towards the silence. It is something very schematic as you say it and the things are never like that with the life and the persons. But if it, he, she, is for outlining to facilitate somehow the comprehension of these things, yes. I would say first respect of the coherence imposes a minimal reflection on itself, like examination of conscience, in big areas of my life. By having detected contradictions, it is possible to make a plan to revert them and this necessarily they are conducting. The only, unique, form in which the businessman stops exploiting his, her, your, employees they is going to be paying more, they are increasing the salary, according to the example that we saw. Then, a practice supported of Jesus' prayer, sentence, will facilitate and help the latter, posterior, works of meditation towards the silence. It, he, she, can comment on something brings over of the access to the internal silence? Different versions existed, he, she, brings over of what is to ponder silently, of what it, he, she, means, of his, her, your, usefulness, utility, or function. There are also different opinions about the best way of approaching this plain silence and also my concern of for whom it suits and in what moment to face this form of prayer, sentence. This is not an exact science, is an experience of the spirit, therefore one can speak only roughly, be effective, carrying out, approximations to this experience of great value for the human being. I cannot speak academic but on the basis of the experienced thing personally, so that I will not look for the systematic thing, but the translation of living in the language of the word. Paradox is not small to say about that one that it, he, she, is silent for the same nature. Nevertheless, this silence has a stamp that is communication, that needs to be transmitted, as if off to express it to others his, her, your, possibility of deepening was depending. The first thing that I found, on having tried, meant, the silent meditation, was the noise. A tremendous cacophony of corporal sensations that were a nuisance and preventing the silence that was searching. Because I had to stop still in the body, being able to look for the silent thing, and had to move away from boisterous places and remain wanting to internalize myself. And all that made me evidente what you upset me, it was turning out been suspected. I was not an owner of my body, not of my mind. Multiple pains, tickles, tensions, agitations and other sensations were demonstrated by having supported an immobile attitude. Innumerable thoughts that were going and coming in different directions, addresses, as if they were clouds taken by opposite winds, were left to see clearly. While she was present at these events, there appeared the third element, which means one was not present like the own, proper, of the body or of the mind. I stayed in the presence of the attention, that as a bundle of light was emphasizing the multiple phenomena that she was observed. This attention was a direction, address, of the look that could stop taking and follow, continue, the varied movements that were flowing in the body and in the mind without interruption, or to be able to go towards a precise point and be supported. It is this position, though not without fatigue. The first real step towards the silence took place, was produced, when I discovered the need to unify all these currents that were going and coming in what could call my integrity. This unification could not take place, be produced, attending what the diverse trends were proposing, but taking the attention towards an element that, making sense to me, could centralize the attention. Jesus' prayer, sentence, started turning into this center. His, your repetition was unifying the mind, extracting it off. The dispersion at the time that she was provoking emotions corresponding to the meaning that was attributing to him, her, to the words. In later, posterior, moments, to associate Jesus' prayer, sentence, with the breathing and then, on occasions, to the movements of the heart. She allowed me to circumscribe the bodily thing and the mental thing in the same interior act. This way in the mind the prayer was repeating itself, and in the body there was breathed or latia, while the attention was supported, forthwith, outright, divisional, that all this was implying. Jesus' prayer, sentence, generated with continuity, contributed a new facility to remain distended, still, yet, in the middle of the difficulties, and certain corporal freshness began to establish close to the repetition of the prayer. She had not acceded to the silence, but the mind was calmer, fewer thoughts were rising and, when they happened, were observed by a new clarity and precision. They could be crumbled and used, or rejected according to his, your usefulness, utility, for the task that was carried out. This was very encouraging, because though she could not affirm that he was already an owner of body and mind, at least she was exercising on them a control and managing very superior to the one that previously had. She was at this point of the practice when, on having thought the question demonstrated in me for the identity of the observer that in all that Hey guys, it's Brent. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and like this video.